good evening. This is Dr. Renita, the founder and visionary of the Refining Life, and I am ecstatic to be back with you again tonight for night five of Refining the Mind Women's Conference 2021, following the theme, It's Already Done. Yes. Welcome back to everyone who has joined us any of the past 4 nights, whether it's been 4 nights, 1 night, 2 nights, 3 nights. However many nights you've been with us, welcome back. And for those of you all who are joining us for the first time tonight, welcome. Come on in the room. And for those of you all who are past Refining the Mind alumni, I'm so glad that you are trusting us with the refinement of your mind once again this year. And I am hoping that every single person who is watching this evening will join us for this event for the next 2 nights, because it's 7 nights total. We're going 7 nights total this year. We got 2 more nights after this, but don't discount what's getting ready to happen in life tonight. Okay? But also, years to come, the Refining Life was founded in 2015. And our mission is to provide people with experiences to have their mindset shifted so that they can lead a more positive and productive life. And for 7 years now, we're in year 7. 7 years, we have been doing just that. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we are so excited every year in every way that we can to refine the minds of those who find themselves in our care. I have an amazing board of directors. I would like to say a big thank you to Shayna Winstead, Shanetta Smith, Rachel Oliver Coppin, Tanya Gibson, and Yolanda Makumbe. Thank you, ladies. You are so fabulous. And Rachel, Shanetta, and Shayna have been with me from the start. Back in 2015, they trusted my vision. They caught it, and they said, let's roll with this thing. So, ladies, I want to say thank you so much for all the work that you do to help support this vision and then keep it moving forward. But tonight, we have an amazing speaker. Before I get to her. Okay, so you see that right there? Okay, so as you know, you didn't have to pay any registration, you didn't have to fill out a registration form, anything to be a part of Refining the Mind Women's Conference this year. That means that anybody, anywhere, anytime could be a part of the conference. 1, thank you. 2, welcome again. But our goal this week is to raise $3,000. Now, $3,000 is a lot, but it's not a lot because we are planning already year 8 of Refining the Mind Women's Conference. And because for the past 2 years we've had to be virtual, if you know me, you know I got plans. So many amazing things that I want to be able to do for you next year, because prayerfully we will be able to be in person and virtual, because I feel like virtual is going to be a part of our life probably for the rest of our lives. So we're going to give people options, but I want to do it up big. And $3,000 is just kind of a little starter money to get us to where we need to be. But guess what? If we raise more, we can do more. We can be more. We can be bigger, and we can keep it still cost effective for you, which is what we would like to do. So our goal is to raise $3,000. You see right here we have our PayPal and Cash App link. If you are sending a really big amount of money, like maybe you want to send like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, you can send the whole thing. Or $2 million, contact me. Either you can hit us up here on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, you can message us, or email me at therefininglife.com. Light, L-I-G-H-T, at therefininglife.com. And I'll tell you where to send your donation. We don't want to mess with all those fees. But we are appreciative of what you can give. No donation is too big or too small. We are grateful. Thank you. So tonight we have a phenomenal speaker. And I know I say that every night, but I've myself right for the past 4 nights. So just keep trusting me. Tonight, night 5, we have Kenia Thompson. And let me tell you. You hear the words coming out of my mouth? Be ready to hear the words coming out of hers, and be ready to be empowered with words that can come out of yours. So, I'm getting out of your way. Get ready. If you have not already got it, grab pencil and paper. I promise you're going to need it. You need to take notes. Take note, because sometimes when we're having our mind refined, we're so into the moment that we forget it 2 days later. No, take your notes so that you can continue with this refinement for days, weeks, months, and years to come. Got your pencil and paper? Go. You got a few seconds. I'm gonna wait for you. Okay, that's it. I'm about to bring Kenya in the screen. Just be ready. I'll see you later.
You have to love Dr. Renita. Thank you so much for your energy, for your visionary, and just for being who you are. As she said, I am Kenia Thompson, and I thank you so much for having me tonight for the fifth night of Refining Life. I hope and pray that the subsequent or the previous nights have been a blessing to you, that you've been able to gain and apply knowledge and just really be empowered to move forward in the next part of your journey. And so tonight, I am going to be talking about breaking the silence. I am an educator, so a lot of what I'm going to be doing is going to be focused around teaching some of these fundamental things that I think that you should know in order to really understand how communication is effective and ineffective, and some things that you can apply to your life in order to get your words and your thoughts across. So we're going to get started. Again, my name is Kenia Thompson. Really, breaking the silence is about understanding who we are, understanding what makes us work with the words that we say. I'll tell my story a little bit later, but I've never been good at this. And I tell people all the time that I am still working on these things. Okay. So a little bit about me, 20-year, now it's a little bit plus, maybe a year or two plus of a marketing professional. We work on video, branding, social media, communication, coaching. I'm an educator, like I said before. I'm also a storyteller. Story is extremely impactful in how we tell and how we speak our stories. I'm an empathic communicator is what I label myself. And the most important thing that I think everyone should always understand, just because I'm on a teaching platform or I'm here on this side doesn't mean that I'm not still working on getting it right. It's a lifelong journey, right? Knowing and understanding ourselves, our language, and then having to understand other people in our lives and how they best communicate, and then how they want us to communicate to them. So I want to share my story with you. I've got a video. Again, I'm a videographer, I'm a storyteller, and I felt the best way to communicate who I am and to get it across was to create a video. I created this video a while ago at a time where I was afraid to tell my story. I was afraid to talk about the things that led me to this journey now. And in all honesty, I'm still afraid to tell parts of it, and I haven't yet, but I know that in due time, I will tell that story and it will be part of my journey and it will help someone else. So take a look at this video and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Imagine being so crippled with fear by the thought of speaking out loud at 15 that you wet your pants. This was me. Now, this is probably the most embarrassing thing I'll ever share about myself, but it's true. It was the end of the day, sixth period in middle school, and for whatever reason, I had to pee like never before. Now, mind you, this was pre-children, so my bladder holding abilities were a lot stronger back then. So I thought I could handle it. But on this day, it didn't matter how strong, it wasn't strong enough. The idea of raising my hand to ask for permission to use the bathroom, then to actually get up, walk out in front of everyone in class, that was mortifying for me. It didn't matter how bad I had to go, I was going to make myself wait. Now, you're probably painting a picture of who I was as a student by now. If you picture a meek, quiet, shy girl, you're right, that was me. Kenya who? No one but the three girls I was friends with at the time actually knew who I was. And I doubt even my teachers knew. That's how quiet I was. So there I am, in my seat, doing the pee-pee dance without really dancing, willing this urge to pee to disappear. But of course, the more you think of something, the more intense it becomes. And then it happened. I didn't even realize it until I felt warm. It was almost comforting, and I thought, oh, it's finally gone away. Until I realized what it was. It did go away, but not the way I wanted it to. I had let it go, literally. 15-year-old Kenya, peed on herself in class. I can look back at it now and laugh, but can you imagine? Can you imagine being so scared to speak up that you'd risk the humiliation of peeing on yourself in public just to avoid speaking, to avoid having any kind of attention on you? Well, I can imagine it because it happened. It's my story. And on that day, I lost my voice. I allowed that moment to steal the most powerful weapon that I had. And while it took some time, I finally learned how to break the silence.
So that is part of my journey. That is part of why I teach the things that I teach today. I don't want this to continue, excuse me. But so when we talk about moments in life that have impacted us, so much so, for me, for example, it was I didn't want to raise my hand. As you could imagine, I was sitting in the back of the room. I didn't want to raise my hand. I didn't want attention to be drawn to me. I didn't want to have to get up and walk out. I said that in the video. I didn't want eyes on me. I didn't want anything to bring any attention to Kenya at all. And that fear paralyzed me so much that I did not allow myself to perform a bodily function where it was supposed to be performed because I just didn't want to deal with it. And, that 15-year-old girl sometimes comes out today. Actually, a lot of times comes out today. And I find myself back in that space of, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to confront it. I'll be transparent. My marriage is and has suffered because of it. And so I find myself again in the back of the room, trying not to get up. But life is telling me, God is telling me, you've got to face it. And a lot of that work now is learning how I best communicate, learning how I need to express myself. And I've recognized that a lot of the issues that I have today is based from conversational trauma in the past. So what conversational trauma have you experienced? Ask yourself those questions. Think about back growing up. I've encountered women who have talked about other young girls who have silenced their voice, their parents who have silenced their voice, teachers who have silenced their voice. And all it takes is one time. All it takes is one thing that you had to say, one thing that you were excited about, and someone told you to go sit down. Someone told you that your thoughts didn't matter. Someone told you that your words weren't important or what you're saying didn't make sense. All it took was that one time, and your voice is silenced, whether we realize it or not. But we wake up, we're 40, we're 45 years old, and we're thinking, how did I get here? How did I get here? How am I now this person? So I'm going to give you a few tips today. Again, I'm an educator, so I've got learning outcomes and I've got educational things that I'm going to share with you. But today we're going to identify the difference between communication, which is something we all do, and effective communication, which is something we don't all do, right? Some tips to master the art of public speaking. And I'll talk about, you might be wondering, why is she talking about public speaking? I'll talk about what public speaking, the definition of public speaking really is a little bit later. And then how to set yourself up for success for future conversations. Okay. All right. So, power of effective communication. What is the definition of communication? Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news, right? I'm just giving information. We watch the news, we hear it, we take it, we may digest it, we may understand it, or we may not. But effective communication is the process of exchanging ideas, thoughts, knowledge, information for the purpose or intention that is fulfilled in the best possible manner. Meaning, I have thought about what I want to say. I'm thinking about what you're saying, and we are now together trying to figure out how are we most effectively, or how is the best method for us to understand each other. And this is what people miss a lot today. We talk just to talk.
We have Facebook, we've got Instagram, we've got LinkedIn, and many more, TikTok, all these platforms that are encouraging us to talk about ourselves, to show off what we're doing. But not once do we sit back to say, well, what are you doing? Can I hear what you're working on? Let me hear your thoughts. Let me hear your feelings and your ideas, right? Because we're so egocentrically ready to share and talk about our own stuff that we are not listening. And effective communication, the number one piece to that is listening. It's not about talking, it's about listening. And if we can listen, then we know how to talk, right? If we can listen, we know what to say to the person that we are having a conversation with. So, what are some characteristics of effective communication? There are plenty of them. I mean, I think in my textbook, there may be 20 to 25 characteristics, but here I've chosen 5 that I think are the most important, right? So, just delivering a message is not enough. When we are talking, we have to think about who is going to receive our message. Who's going to be interpreting this? And then, most importantly, how do they want us to deliver this content to them? Have you ever thought about being in a space? Maybe it's this kind of platform, a virtual workshop. Maybe it's been at work. Maybe it's been at home with your spouse, with your children. And you're thinking, they just don't understand me. They just don't get what I'm trying to say. Well, maybe it's because you've been trying to say it how you understand it and not how they need to understand it. So let's go through these 5 effective characteristics. Number 1 is a clear message. So this is a message which the sender wants to send, to convey. It must be simple, it must be easy to understand, and it must be framed to retain its meaningfulness. We have to be very clear. That word simple is very important in this statement. Because when we start to have these convoluted definitions and examples and scenarios, it becomes overwhelming for someone who doesn't understand, right? They're not coming from your brain. So we want them to get it as simply as possible. And if they ask for more information, then we can give that to them later. Second characteristic is a correct message. Information communicated must not be vague or false in any sense. It must be free from errors and grammatical mistakes, right? That's potentially written form. That might be more professionally, but let's think about our personal relationships. When someone has a conversation with you, we expect honesty, right? We expect authenticity, or else there really isn't a genuine conversation that's happening. So think about what we're communicating and how much the other person is trusting us with the honesty of our words. They want us to be true to them, and we would want that in return. Third characteristic is a complete message. Communication is based on decision making here. If the information is incomplete, then it may lead to wrong decisions, right? If you only give me half of the scenario and you say, Kenya, go make a decision. Well, I may think that you're giving me everything I need to know. But as the subject matter expert or as the one leading the conversation, it is your responsibility to equip me with all of the knowledge I need to make the best decision for myself, for my job, for my kids, for my husband, whatever the scenario may be. And so again, that goes back to the correct message and a complete message, meaning I need as much transparency and again, authenticity from you as possible. And then the last, which is the one I think is probably the most important, is precise, a precise message. The message sent must be short and concise to facilitate straightforward interpretation and take desired steps. So let's break this one down a little bit. What's the difference between how men tell a story and how women tell a story? I'll let you think about it for a second. Okay. So when I get with my girlfriends and we're telling a story, it starts something like this. Girl, let me tell you what happened today. I was at the mall. I was looking cute. I just got my hair done, right? We're in it. If it's our girlfriend, it's our close girlfriend. We're in the story. We're picturing what she looked like, what the scene was like. But most men are going to tell you exactly how it happened, right? Straight to the point. He just came out of nowhere and they started fighting. I'm making this up, right? They started fighting. Police came, broke it up. They both got arrested and went home. A little dramatic, I know, but went straight to the point. Now, if you want details, you got to ask when it comes to men. I'm not stereotyping here, right? This is just generalities. For most women, if we're telling a story, a lot of times people get lost because we've taken an extra 10 to 15 minutes to go around the whole neighborhood to get to where we really needed to be, just because we like to sightsee, right? It's the same thing in a conversation. Most people need information straightforward, straight to the point, and then if they want the details, they'll ask, right? And I understand that sometimes takes away from the jovialness of a conversation. Now, you know who to do this with. You know, if it is your best friend of 30 plus years, of course, we can talk about what the day was like, what we were wearing, how we felt. That's fine. But when we encounter new people or when we are having more serious conversations, right? When things are a little more tense, when a lot more is at stake, it's not time to go around the block. We've got to be specific. We've got to be direct. And a lot of people will find that ambiguity or that extra walk around the block, as I like to call it, as being misleading, right? As not being as authentic as we should be, because sometimes that feels like we're buttering people up. It feels like we're trying to get you into a space before I drop the bomb. So think about your delivery. Think about, again, who you are delivering to, but then most importantly, how do they want you to deliver that information? Your spouse and your brother, both two men, may want to have their messages delivered differently. And someone in that close of a proximity to you in your life, you should know how they want to be communicated to. You should know what triggers them. You should know what buttons to push or not to push. You should know that. And if you don't, then you have to do the work in yourself to understand, well, what is it in me that is causing me not to understand another person's communication style as effectively as I should? A lot of times that stems from not knowing your own. Once you know how you communicate, then you understand what other people need from you. Okay. All right. So some of the benefits, when we talk about the characteristics, what are some of the benefits? Productivity. We feel like we're doing more because we're talking less, right? We're saying the words that matter and talking less. Teamwork, whether that's again at work, whether that's at home, you start to feel more like a unit. Sometimes people can start to predict what you're going to say because they know you, they understand how you want to say it. Transparency, that's huge. Again, that honesty. Conflict resolution. So, a lot of the things we're saying may feel good, but not always. Most of the times, these issues present themselves in a time where we just aren't communicating well with someone, whether that's because of something they've done, something that, or some way that we feel about them is causing us to miscommunicate. And so being able to understand the right word selection and understand how this person wants us to communicate with them allows us to have conflict resolution that's a lot smoother. Now, you may ask, well, Kenia, what if I just don't know this person? They're at work and I just don't know this person and she sends me emails all the time and I just don't like her tone. Well, first question I'll ask is, how do you know what her tone is in her email? Unless she said specific words to denote some sort of feeling or attitude, whether positive or negative, how do you know what her tone is? We are reading the tone. We are creating the tone. It's happened to me many times. For whatever reason, someone rubs me the wrong way, they send me an email. I read that email with the tone. And so immediately my tone now influences my words and my behaviors towards this person. Right. And then the last benefit, which there are many, but these are the ones again that I've chosen to select for you today, is trust. If you trust my words, then you trust me. Right. And trust goes a long way. As we've said before, trust goes a very long way. Trust allows for vulnerability. Trust allows for healing. Trust allows for growth. If I can trust you with my words, hence my feelings, my experiences, then I feel like I'm in a safe space with you. I think we take our words too lightly. Our words have power. They have true meaning. And if we just share our words with anyone, our thoughts. So when I say our words, I mean our thoughts and our feelings and our vulnerabilities. We don't know who to trust. And so it's very important for those in our circles, whether they're here for a brief time or whether they're here for a long time, that we provide that space of trust for them with their words. And in turn, you will find that space of trust for you with your words. All right, so talk about public speaking. Now, most of us know public speaking as getting up on a stage. Like, for example, if we weren't in a pandemic and we were all together today and we were on stage, I would have likely been on stage with, I don't know what your numbers were last time, Renita, but let's go with 500 to 1,000 women and maybe some men sprinkled in there, right? That's what we think about when we think about public speaking, that we're on this platform, that we've got all these eyeballs staring at us. And while that is a form of public speaking, it's not the only form of public speaking. So let's go ahead and identify, though, what the fear is. And this fear, again, is for large or small, but glossophobia is a fear of public speaking. Sometimes we see this manifest as sweaty palms, heart racing, voice trembling, sweaty underarms, and you've got to keep your arms down so nobody sees your sweat stains, right? Some people faint. Some people get extremely nervous. Everything just blacks out. And that's understandable. Trust me, I'm the person who peed on herself in class. I understand what fear of public speaking is. But I think what most people don't realize and therefore don't recognize when this happens on a smaller scale is that public speaking isn't just about speaking to the masses. Public speaking, the definition is having a conversation with one or more persons. So in a one-on-one conversation, I am public speaking. I'm public speaking right now, even though no one's in front of me but my camera, right? I know, though, eventually that you will see this, and it's public speaking. When I have a conversation with my child and both of my kids, it's public speaking. When I have a conversation with a group of 5, that's public speaking. When I have a conversation with my spouse, that is public speaking. And so I think people discount those nervous feelings that we may have or encounter when we have these conversations because we're like, this isn't public speaking. This isn't real, but it is real. It's okay to be nervous about a conversation you may have with your spouse or your child or your parent. That is normal. That is extremely normal. What's not okay is for you to allow it to steal the power of your voice, for you to allow it to steal the meaning behind what you have to really say. How many times, ask yourself this question, how many times have you thought of all the perfect words to say in a conversation that's very important to you, and the minute that you get there, you black out? You forget it. You're just like, never mind, I'm not going to do this. That's glossophobia. That is the fear of speaking your mind. And so on this next couple of slides, I'm going to talk about some ways that we can get over that fear. Okay. But let's first look at this, though. 77% of people feel anxiety when public speaking. 77%. That's way more than half. And I think what people don't realize, because you're like, oh, she's a great public speaker, he's amazing.
They all feel it. Just some people are better at hiding it than others. And then some people actually work on it. That's where I want you to be. I want you to actually have worked on it, not hiding it, because hiding it, it's still there. And it will surface at some point when we least expect it if we don't work on it. Right. And then the next stat is very simple. We are all public speakers. 100% of us on this world, even if you are deaf, if you are mute, you still communicate. We are still public speakers. So you can't escape it, is what I'm trying to say. And I still try to almost every day, but we can't. We cannot escape it. So here are some things that we can do. First, I'd love this quote because I think this is a great verbal example of or understanding of how powerful communication is. So Osmo Wee, if communication can fail, it will, and it will fail. It will be understood in the way that does most harm. Rarely people take your words, misunderstand them, and say, oh, she didn't mean it in a mean way, or she didn't mean that in a bad way. People are 9 times out of 10, maybe 8 times out of 10, I'll give you some leniency, will think negatively, at least at first, right? They're going to take your words and like, what did she mean by that? I don't understand what she meant by that. They're going to feel some kind of way. Now, most rational people will start to dissect or try to understand your words and say, okay, well, maybe this is what she meant. The most rational people will just go back and ask, but how many of us really do that? Sadly, not enough of us, because that's why we've got issues today with communication, right? So here's some tips. Again, speaking tips doesn't mean that you're going to be on a platform. Speaking tips means a phone call, means a conversation at home, okay? The first thing to do, though, is to recognize what's holding you back. Is it trauma? A lot of us, for me, it's trauma. The majority of my issues stem from trauma. I did not want to admit that. I didn't think, because I wasn't abused, I wasn't, molested or any of those things. Fortunately, that didn't happen to me, but that doesn't mean I didn't experience trauma. I think we minimize a lot of the things that we go through because it doesn't look as bad as what some other people have gone through. We can't trivialize our trauma. Your bad is just as bad as anyone else's. So that's the first thing you need to identify. What's holding you back? What's triggering the feelings? And then let's label those feelings. Is it anxiety? Is it nervousness? What is it? What are the feelings that we are feeling? And then how do we fix those? How do we solve those issues? Is it more practice? Is it dealing with the trauma? Is it going back to having resolution conversations that we need to have with people in our past? Sometimes we can't move forward without dealing with things that have happened in the past. So what is it? Identify it, label it, and then address it. What's the opportunity for growth? Second tip is understand the 3 components of speaking. Number 1, people hate to hear this, but it is not about you. Speaking is not about you at all. It's about who we intend our message for. It's who we intend our message for. The part that's about us is finding the power in our words, finding the power to say what we need to say. But effective communication, once again, is about understanding how people want to hear what you're saying. Not necessarily, I was going to say what they need to hear, but that's not always the case. We don't always want to hear what we need to hear, but it's about how we hear what we need to hear. Okay. Number 2, telling stories is great. I told a story with the video that I created. Doesn't have to be that elaborate, doesn't have to, be positioned in that way, but sharing stories helps people relate. If I tell you where I come from and why I am the way that I am, then you now have a little more empathy, not sympathy. I'm not feeling bad for you, but I understand you. I'm empathizing, right?
And then prepare. Anything important to us, we prepare for. If you're an athlete, you practice, right? If you bake cakes, you practice before that perfect cake comes together, right? Why is this any different? We have to practice. I have a whole conversation in my head before I have a conversation with the person that I intend to have a conversation with. If I'm delivering content, I have prepared my slides. I have prepared my speech. Before every semester at school, I go over my notes so that I don't know who I'm going to be talking to, because every semester is a different set of students, but I know my content, so they can't say Ms. Thompson didn't know what she was talking about, right? So there's preparation, regardless of the scale or the magnitude or how many people we're talking to, or if it's personal or business, there's preparation. And then the last step, and I always tell people this because I give advice. I tell you what's worked for me, what may have worked for people in the past, but do what works for you. Find the balance between all the things that I've taught, all the things that you learn on your own from life experience or from your own studies, and do what works for you. We're all uniquely different. So what may work for me may not work for you. Or you may say, you know what, I like how you did that there, but let me tweak it a little bit. That's okay. That's what makes us unique. If we all talk the same and deliver the same, it would make for a very boring world. But if we remember those key elements and then sprinkle a little bit of personality on there, it's a no-brainer. It works. I promise you it works. But you've got to stick at it. You've got to continue working on yourself. There's a lot of inner work that has to be done in order for us to continue to communicate effectively, because people in our lives change, whether they actually change and leave our lives or people evolve as we all do. I'm not the same Kenia I was 10, 15 years ago, right? And I'd like to beg that your spouse, you yourself, your children are not the same people they were when you first met them. So why would you think their conversation style or what they need from you would stay the same too? So analyze these things as you think about some of the areas of deficit in your communication. Think about how you have been communicating thus far. Where are some areas of opportunity for growth? What are the feelings that you feel? Do we need to do some deeper work? I've been going to therapy. Do you need therapy? That's okay, right? Understand what we need from ourselves and have grace so that we can be the more effective speakers that we want to be in our lives, right? I threw this in there just in case someone wanted to potentially do more. I do teach public speaking, which again, public speaking isn't just about the art of being on a stage, but it's about understanding how to have effective conversation. If you want to know more and you want to get in touch with me, feel free to jot down my information. I am an open book. If you just want to talk and say, what do you think? This is what I'm dealing with. This is where I want to be and where I want to go. What do you think? I'm more than happy to talk. I appreciate your time today, and I appreciate you listening. So you listened. I hope you listened. I hope you took some notes. Again, if there are things that you want clarity on, or you just want to explore some various areas of focus, let me know. My contact information is right there. I thank you, Dr. Renita, for having me as a speaker today. And I pray that the rest of the week continues on and blesses you, and that you are able to find and apply the information that you need for this time in your life. Thank you so much.
I told you. It was going to be amazing. Are you ready to break the silence? Are you ready to break the silence? Because I told you, our famous is already done. Break the silence. Take back what's already yours. Come through, Kenya. See, See, I told you. I told you. Every single day, we got something for you. And even if you might bring like, just listen. Listen every night. Every night it's been amazing. Every night we got something for you. So you just, I told you to be ready. So quit not listening to me. You got that? Quit not listening to me. Quit not listening to me. Quit not listening to me. Even though if you're here, you're listening to me. So, Kenia, my goodness, what a powerful session. What a powerful word. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Look, it's time to break that silence. It's time to speak up. Come on, my sisters. I know some of y'all brothers out there. It's all right. Referring to my women's council is something that we hold sacred in our sacred space when it's just us ladies. But when it's on the internet, stop the fellas from watching. So I am hoping that ladies and gentlemen, and for those of you all who have crept into the room, that you have been empowered by this. That you've been empowered through this session. Because that's what we're about here. We want you to have those experiences, to have those negative things burnt away from you, so that you can get to your pure self, so that you can lead a positive and productive life, a more positive and productive life, so that you can positively impact the world. Because all it takes is you. You to affect somebody else, who affects somebody else, who affects somebody else, and positive change, and light can shine brighter. And that's what our mission is, to help the light shine bright in this world. Through the refinement of our mind, which attaches to our souls, our spirits, and we can just be better. So I hope that you enjoyed that. I know you did. So for those of you who have not already, you see right there, Cash App and PayPal link to send a donation to the Refining Life. Once again, we are raising funds to make our next program year amazing. Because as you've seen this year, or maybe you have, we've had Mirror Image, Belinda Burke, for a few months. We did the Sunday shift with some amazing women for a few months. We are back at conference time. Next year, we want to continue to give you your virtual programming, create some new in-person programming, maybe even bringing back Refining. Who knows? But also make Refining the Mind, Women's 2022 year of new beginnings, off the charts, off the meat rack, all that in the bag of chips. Those big things. So thank you once again for being with us this evening. We'll see you tomorrow. We got a new time tomorrow. It's going to be 5 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be 5, not 7:30. It's going to be 5 o'clock on Saturday and Saturday. So make sure you join us at 5. And as always, bring yourself, but always invite someone else. Our goal is to keep this growing throughout the week. So if you're here for the first time, great. Make sure you bring somebody tomorrow. If you brought 52 people yesterday, bring another 52 tomorrow. Right? Okay. Great. I love you. I'm Dr. Rita. I'm visionary of the Refining Life. See you tomorrow at 5.